welcome to Booktopia.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the beer.
You found the beer. The beer's got nothing to do with me. Now, you begin The Poet's Wife with a very violent anecdote, which in a way sets the tone for some pretty shocking material. Tell us how the book opens.
It opens with my receiving the news via email that my ex-husband's subsequent partner had murdered their 2-year-old child and committed suicide 3 days before they were about to reunite as a family. I had just been married 5 months, remarried 5 months. I was very happy. So to receive this news, would have been about 5 years after we'd divorced, was an incredible shock to me, because I had also experienced suicidal tendencies and deep depression for 7 of the 11 years of our relationship. So when I did receive the news, my heart did not go out to him, it went out to the subsequent partner. And that motivated me to go back and narrate the story of my marriage to him.
Him being, let's introduce him.
Yes, Yusef Komunyakaa, who's an African-American poet and academic, and he was the first African-American poet to win the Pulitzer Prize for poetry, which was in 1994, about 18 months before we separated.
Okay, we may come back to that particular moment in your very troubled relationship later, but let's just go back to the beginning of the book, because you give us this shocking news about the suicide and murder of, as you say, his subsequent partner. And then in stark contrast with that, you cut to this very sexy encounter with him. Obviously the attraction between you was very powerful and it was very physical. Is that something, is that your instant kind of connection with someone, is the physical? What was it about him that attracted you so much?
Well, one of the reasons why that second prelude is there is because in the actual bulk of the narrative there isn't a lot of passion, and so I kind of wanted to flag that at the beginning, how, as most, or virtually every relationship begins like that, with that incredible physical connection and you know, the chemistry and the smells and the tactility of another person, and it's so visceral that I really wanted to make that prominent, so we had somewhere to fall.
Yeah, because of course then the
Yes.
contrast, as you're suggesting there, is that later on he turns away from you physically and rejects you comprehensively.
Yes, that was very difficult to deal with, considering that he was probably interested in anyone else but me, whether it's sexually or creatively, and it happened over a period of years, but it was a gradual rejection and undermining of my confidence.
Can you talk a little bit about his personality, and at what point you started to get an inkling that this was someone who was very troubled? What were the early signs for you?
The fact that he didn't trust me. He'd eavesdrop on conversations I had with my father. When I tap dance on the street, if I weren't with my father, he'd accuse me of dancing like a whore, that everyone thought I was a slut, and these sorts of accusations just seemed to come out of nowhere, and it seemed like there was another person inside him, or several people, in fact. So that was quite a shock for me to experience, that someone who could be so gentle and soft-spoken and graceful could just turn like that.
And you were too young to be in any way prepared or equipped to deal with what was going on. One of the themes that you sort of explore and tease out in the book is the impact that prejudice may have had on his personality.
Yes.
What are your thoughts around that?
Well, when I began the book, I began with a premise, which was a question for myself. I obviously wanted to understand him, and my question was, how much is American race relations, Vietnam, segregation, and his background in the Deep South, how much is that responsible for his erratic behaviour, and how much personal responsibility should he be taking? And so that was the question I had when I was writing the book, and at the end I think it's probably a bit of both. He often, one of his sayings was that racism causes mental illness. Actually he said racism is a form of mental illness, meaning white people have problems with it, but I came to the conclusion that racism actually causes mental illness, and he is a sufferer as well. So it's a very delicate situation, and one that I negotiated, with a very delicate hand.
So do you think that means that racism made him, to some extent, perhaps more paranoid?
Yes, oh absolutely, there's no question about that. More paranoid, and also Vietnam, more paranoid, less trusting, and also he was abandoned by his mother at the age of 10, and he didn't see her for 9 years. I think that was a great contributor to his insecurities and erratic behaviour.
Now, when you met, you were in your 20s. And
I just turned 22.
Right, yeah. And he was considerably older. How much older you didn't actually realise at the time. But I just wondered, what was your track record with men up until that point?
Well, I guess one reason why I was so vulnerable in that relationship, because it was the first serious relationship I'd had. I'd had boyfriends and flings and things like that, but I'd never been in love. And I'd never experienced those sensations and feelings before. So because it was the first time I'd fallen in love, I didn't really understand what I should be able to expect from a relationship. I'd never really had any role models in terms of a healthy relationship with not so much with my parents, my brothers, my sisters. They'd all had, broken homes, broken relationships, broken marriages, and dysfunction everywhere. So I really had no models from which to draw. And so I thought if I could just improve myself enough for him and change enough for him, that he would love me again, and he would make love with me again, and he would accept me again. So I put myself through a kind of rigorous obstacle course over the years of self-improvement, which nearly drove me crazy. And
which involved incredible sacrifice for you, for example, children.
Yes, that's right. And, I became anorexic because he used to tell me I was fat all the time. He said that, my writing was too feminine and domestic, that I should write a bigger, bolder, larger, more masculine book, things like that. And so instead of withdrawing and tell him to piss off, I accepted all the criticism and bent over backwards to try and accommodate it.
What did you think of his poetry? Was that one of the things that was compelling?
Absolutely
was that
brilliant.
Part of the problem is that on the page you admired him so much.
Absolutely, and also, because he is a narcissist, in public he was performing constantly, so everyone thought he was wonderful and charming, and he could do no wrong, so he was idolised in public, but once he got home he was completely different. And so I would have people in public, women, saying, "You're so lucky to be married to him." And so that combined with the beautiful poetry, I thought, well, what's wrong with me that I can't appreciate this relationship? Everyone else thinks it's wonderful except me. Yeah.
So Mandy, this must have been an incredibly painful book to write. I can see how it would be liberating. I can see how it would be cathartic. But did you hesitate about this kind of raw emotion that you're sharing with us, and about that really, it's very sordid. Some of it is really dreadful.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, absolutely I did. However, when I write a first draft, I always include the real names, the real locations, everything. That's my version. And I always pretend that no one's going to read it and no one's going to publish it. It's the only way I can get a first draft done. And then after that, when I submit it to a publisher, that's when the compromises begin. But I have to tell you, every day that I was writing this book, I felt absolutely terrified, physically terrified, because I was betraying so many secrets, and I was anticipating his reaction, and I was terrified about that. But then I told myself, if you're telling the truth, you should be terrified. There's something at stake and it's worthwhile. If you felt completely relaxed, it's probably not worth writing.
What was the most shocking thing that you discovered about him? Because he was so secretive and he had so many things that he had lied to you about. Yeah. In the course of the years that you spent together, what was the thing where you just thought, now this is the thing I can't get past?
Well, it's the catalyst for my leaving, and I'd rather not spoil the plot. However, yes, the book can actually be read as a kind of thriller. A domestic thriller, as the wife being the kind of detective trying to uncover the mysteries and secrets of her unknowable husband. So I spent about 8 years doing that and still being confused until I finally came upon a piece of evidence which I could not deny, and that was the thing that I thought, no, I can't live with this anymore, and I've got to start looking after myself.
And given that Yusef is a very distinguished poet, as you said, he won the Pulitzer, which was his ambition, covered in glory, what has his reaction been?
Well, I don't know personally, but Jacqueline Maley, who wrote a story for The Good Weekend, contacted him. I got feedback from her. She found him very difficult, very terse. He would not cooperate, and then he would, and then he wouldn't. He was very evasive. But I knew as soon as she questioned him about his real age, I said, if you do that, he will not answer you correctly, and he'll start hassling me. And exactly what happened. The phone calls started right after that. He called me about every half an hour throughout Christmas and would not leave a message, and then it would stop. And then a week would go by and then it would start again. And I knew it was him. And he would not leave a message and ask me to call him back, because I imagine he just wanted to give me a piece of his mind over the phone without any record of it. So I haven't allowed him that opportunity, and I just screen my calls.
One of the great things that comes through in the book, though, is that however much he seeks to damage you and how much he knocks you down, you do come back with this very particular unique resilience that you have, and in a way his provocation makes you a better writer.
Yes, though it came with a great cost to my mental health and my physical health. I'm fine now, but it took me many years to recover, and I do have a public persona that travels rather well, but I still have nightmares about being with him almost every night. I have nightmares where I'm back in Bloomington and I can't get out. So while I feel good about having published the book, psychologically I'm probably not that much healthier than I was before I wrote it.
So do you think that competition between writers can ever be healthy? Writers who live together?
Right? No. You've got to want the best for one another. And I really don't understand rivalry myself. I mean, I don't want to be married to a loser. I want to be married to a winner. I want to be married to someone I'm proud of, and that I can look up to and that I can learn from. That's the kind of partner I want, and fortunately I found one who likes that as well.
Well, exactly. That brings me to what I was going to ask you next. You're now married to another writer. I would have thought that after your experience with Yusef, you might have said, no more writers.
I said no more poets.
You.
I said no more poets. It was a moratorium on poets.
That's really unfair on poets, I have to say.
I know. Yeah, no more poets.
But how did you know, seriously? I know Louis Nara is a very different animal, obviously, otherwise you wouldn't be happy and you wouldn't be together. But how did you know that you could trust your judgment, that you weren't going to make the same mistake?
Well, I didn't. Of course, you have to take that risk. But Louis was very good, because I was terribly insecure and I had a lot of baggage early on. And, for example, when he'd meet someone in the street and give them a hug and say, oh, we must have lunch, like a woman, and then he wouldn't introduce me, that would just send me into a spin, from my past. And he'd make me sit down and talk to me for hours about it and say, no, I really love you. I love you more than anybody, and I will always love you more than anybody. And so he had to talk me through that and reinforce my confidence. And now it's great. I mean, we can go overseas on our own, and it's fine. We have just such a bank of trust that I will never take it for granted. Never. Is
there anything then, looking back on the relationship with Yusef, that you feel grateful for, that you feel was part of the making of the you that we
absolutely.
know today? What is that?
Well, he he gave me a great education. He paid for me to go through university. He encouraged me to write. He believed in my talent early on. I certainly would not be the writer I am today without his input. He provided me with a great intellectual life. So in some ways I had to sacrifice a lot of calm, happy home life to celebrate what I could in the marriage and to exploit what I could in the marriage, what was good for me, and just hang on to that,
Is there a sense in which this book is also meant to be a message to other women who are living in abusive relationships to say, get out while you can?
Absolutely. My sister rang me up about a month ago. She just finished the book and left a message saying, this book is incredible, ring me back. She never says this, by the way. So I ring back and I'm thinking she's going to love the prose style or something or other like that. All she did was talk about her own marriage, which she just ended after about 10 years as well. And apparently she was having doubts about the decision she'd made. She was about to take the guy back until she read the book, and it brought up so many similarities for her. She said, oh, thank God I read the book, there's no way I'm going back into that now. And I find myself being on the road and when I'm signing books, I'm doing a lot of counselling now with women who are actually in a relationship like that, or know someone, or has a daughter or a niece. In fact, in Adelaide just a few days ago at the audience, there were probably about 200 people there, and I asked how many people were in a relationship or knew someone in a relationship like this or had been in one, and half of them put up their hands. Half. Some men. I've even had an 83-year-old gay man weeping in my arms saying this is a story of my relationship with my boyfriend. He's treated me like this for years. So I had no idea I was also writing a self-help book, but I'm glad that it has some agency and some power beyond just literature and my story.
Well, Mandy Sayer, thank you very much for your courage and for your honesty.
Thank you for the beer.